When I was in the thick of burnout, I didn't fully understand what was happening to me. It had crept up so gradually that for a really long time, I just kept telling myself that I was tired, I was just stressed or going through a rough patch. But it got to the point where it was more than just a rough patch. And I kept thinking that as soon as this, as soon as that, I'll feel better. But I just kept feeling worse and worse. And I knew that I was exhausted and overwhelmed and completely unlike my usual self, but I didn't really have the language for it yet. So today in this video, I want to share what burnout actually felt like for me, because if you're someone who is somewhere in that same space now, that same place, it might help you to recognize what's actually happening before you push through even further. And I really hope that you don't. Hi, I am Michelle. And I'm on what I call the other side of burnout, menopause, quitting drinking, and a bunch of other life changes. And I've been sharing my journey and what I've learned through all of it in the hope that it will help anybody else out there going through similar things to feel seen, understood, and more hopeful. A little bit over a year ago, I wrote a blog post on my blog about what burnout actually really felt like for me. And it was the first time that I tried to put into real words the experience that I was having while it was still fresh in my mind. Because when you're in burnout, it's surprisingly hard to explain, even to yourself. So I want to talk through parts of that today in a way that might help you recognize it in your own life if it's happening to you. So this is what burnout felt like for me. One of the first places that obviously I really felt it was at work, and work had always been something that I was good at and I was passionate about. I cared about it a lot. It was my life, and it was something that gave me a real sense of purpose. But slowly that changed, and it happened gradually over time. There was a bit of a career curveball that, destroyed my confidence a little bit, and then it was hard to come back from, and things kind of just declined from there. And work became the thing that I dreaded more than anything. Every single day I would dread it. And I completely lost my confidence, and it just got worse and worse. And I went from feeling like this strong, capable, experienced person who was passionate about work and learning more and doing more, to the point where I was just questioning everything and second guessing everything that I was doing. I would sit in meetings and think about what I was going to say and then get paranoid and not say anything. If I did say anything, then I would think, oh, that sounded stupid, you're an idiot, why did you say that? And then I would be in my head about it for days, even weeks afterwards about things that I'd said, even if it was nothing really, nothing really that anyone else was going to be worried about, but I would be in my head about everything. I would be sitting on calls, on Zoom calls, or there were Google Hangouts where I was working, and I would be hearing other people speak, and I would hear the words, and same in in-person meetings as well. I would hear people speaking, but I couldn't take in the words. I couldn't focus. It was just sounding like blah, 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 blah. I just could not be interested in anything. I'd become, completely disengaged. And I would be staring at my screen on calls, trying to focus. And when I was doing work as well, just trying really hard to focus and trying to care, trying to contribute, but I just couldn't. There was nothing coming. And then I would feel resentful towards the people who still seemed passionate and energetic at work. Someone would be doing a presentation and sound really excited about it. And maybe I sounded like that too when I was doing things, because I was very good at putting on the brave face. And a lot of people said that they never suspected anything. But I would see other people and they would be doing things really well and with the full passion and energy that I used to. And I would feel resentful towards them. And they hadn't done anything wrong, they're just doing a great job. But I resented them because I wanted to feel like that again, and I just couldn't. And that was a hard thing to admit, but that's how it was. And I would be writing emails and I would reread them over and over and over again before sending them, terrified that I had written something stupid or that someone might read it a certain way. And then I would look like an idiot, or that I'd missed something and I'd make a mistake. And it would take me forever to send an email. And there was this constant underlying thought of, why am I like this? What's happened to me? I never used to be like this. I was confident before. And I was overthinking everything. That was a whole lot of overthinking already. But it wasn't just with work. My mind would just never ever switch off. So work and other conversations, even outside of work, things that I'd said, things that I might have said wrong, things that I might have or should have done differently, I would be replaying every single interaction in my head for days, weeks, even months. And I would be beating myself up over things that probably didn't really matter to anyone else. No one else probably even noticed. And at the same time, there was this constant feeling of guilt underneath everything. And I spoke about that in my last video, because from the outside, my life looked really good. I had a great job in a great company. I have a nice home. I have a good husband, great marriage, and I was going on nice holidays. And I kept telling myself, what do you even have to complain about? Why are you feeling this way? And that thought just made everything worse, because now I was struggling and then judging myself for struggling. And I had all sorts of physical symptoms too. And I didn't really register that those were related to stress until much later, after everything that I've learned. I was getting migraines that would last for days on end. Every time I had a migraine, it would last for exactly 3 days for some reason. And I was going through perimenopause. In hindsight, I know this now. At the time, so it could have been partially related to that. But yeah, I will never know. But the migraines were horrible, and I know I was definitely stressed. Perimenopause was a real thing, but the burnout was definitely a real thing. I know this now. And my sleep was all messed up. I would wake up in the middle of the night and my mind would be racing, not being able to stop thinking about meetings that I had had, things that I had said that might have sounded stupid, visualizing my calendar for the next week with, sometimes as many as 10, 12 meetings crammed into one day, trying to work out how I was going to get anything done in between them. And I just could not sleep. I would sleep for a couple of hours and then wake up and not be able to get back to sleep again. So I was regularly taking sleeping tablets as a way to get through that. And even then, sleeping tablets didn't feel like proper sleep. And I was drinking as well, and I'll talk a bit more about that. But yeah, we all think that sleep will help knock you out, drinking will help knock you out, but it actually doesn't. It makes your sleep worse. So I was taking sleeping tablets and I was drinking, and my sleep was really messed up. And my gut as well, I had gut issues. Now, hopefully this is not too much information, but it was quite normal for me to go a week or longer without going to the toilet. And I now know that that was related to stress as well, and because all of that just magically disappeared once I was no longer stressed. And I was taking laxatives because I was so bloated and uncomfortable that that was how I was getting through. So I was taking sleeping tablets, taking laxatives. Eventually I was taking antidepressants as well. I'll talk about later what happened after we discovered it was burnout. I was taking all sorts of medications just to push through all the discomfort. And I had constant tension in my body as well. And I believe this is a lot of what triggered the migraines. I also had just tension here. I got frozen shoulder, which again could have been related to menopause, but can also be attributed to stress. I know this now. And I had this strange sciatic pain that just would not go away. And I had an MRI and everything, and there was no reasonable cause that we could identify for it. And I had an MRI, nothing came up. So I don't know where that came from. It had to have been stress, because when I finally took a mental health break, that just magically disappeared as well. So even simple things would feel stressed and rushed, and even I would stress about the tiniest little things. If I had to fold a load of washing, I had this constant sense of panic and urgency around it, thinking I haven't got time, I have to rush everything. So everything, just walking down the street, I was getting frustrated because people were walking slower, and I thought, I don't have time, I have to walk faster. These people need to move out of my way. I had no patience, and it was crazy. So trying to calm myself down from all of that, I would drink. And I had grown up around drinking, and that's something I will definitely talk about more in future videos. And drinking was always just my way of coping. It was my way of celebrating. It was my way of relaxing, my way of commiserating. So I would, after a stressful week, I didn't drink every night, but after a stressful week, I would binge on a Friday night. And I wasn't drinking really in a way that looked that unusual from the outside. A lot of people have a few drinks on the weekend after a stressful week. And a lot of people drink at work drinks, networking drinks, client lunches, things like that. So I did all of that. But I would often then go home and drink more. And it was a way of just switching off and quieting my mind, but only temporarily, because I would then wake up the next day feeling major anxiety and I would just feel worse. And that would just keep feeding in a loop. So anyway, that's for another video. But looking back now, I can see things so much more clearly. And at the time, I didn't fully comprehend just how far things had gone, because all of these things creep up. And you hear other people talking about, that they have these similar kind of ailments. It just becomes normal. And it should not be normal. It isn't normal. So it wasn't until I had a real wake-up call moment and I was ugly crying in my doctor's office when she told me that I was suffering from burnout-induced depression. And I'll tell you more about that in a subsequent video too. But that was when I started to understand just how serious things had gotten. And before that, I just thought I wasn't coping as well as everyone else, and I kept beating myself up about it. But I had completely lost myself. This was not how I wanted to be living. I was on the verge of tears all the time. I had no patience. And there was even days where I had hoped that maybe I would get hit by a car or something just horrible like that, so that I'd have a legitimate excuse not to have to go to work. And that was just a horrible way to be living. I was miserable. So this is important to know, I think, because burnout builds really slowly. It's not something that just suddenly you wake up one day and you're like that. It happens just a little bit at a time, and you just keep going with these things, and you keep functioning, and you keep telling yourself that you're going to be fine, that as soon as this happens or that happens, then everything will be fine. And things build up and build up until one day you realize that you are just not yourself anymore and you can't keep going the way that you are. And if you're feeling this way, please, please, please take it seriously. It's not normal to feel like you are completely disappearing from your own life. So please, if you're feeling this way, go and see your GP or take a break if you can, a proper break, not just a day off. That's not going to fix it. And if you're not sure how to even start doing that, I've got some resources that are on my website, and I'll put a link in the description below, things that might help you. So if you want to read the full version of the blog post that has most of that in it, I think I've kind of freestyled a little bit, but the blog post I will link in the description as well. And if this resonated with you, I would really love to hear from you in the comments. And I would love to hear if any of your burnout symptoms were similar or the same, or if there's anything else that you've felt that I haven't mentioned here. There's probably a whole lot more as well that I experienced that I haven't explained. But yeah, that gives you a pretty good picture. So in the next video, I will talk about my lead up to burnout, because one of the things that I did when I realized that this was what was going on, I thought, how the hell did I get here? If I can figure out how I got here, then maybe I can figure out my way back out again. So I went through and mapped my whole lead up to burnout across the 12 stages to see where I was. So I will talk through that in the next video. And if you're interested in hearing about that one, please subscribe. Anyway, I hope you have a good day. Thank you for listening. Bye.